Imagine that one day, after working hard to save up $100, you put it in the bank. The next day, the bank tells you, "Sorry." Wouldn't you lose your mind on the spot? Even scarier, what if the bank were the only one in the whole world holding that ledger? The only one able to change it? The only one with the final say? How could you prove that you really had $100? You say you remember it. Useless. You say you took a screenshot. The bank says, "Screenshots don't count." You ask someone else to testify, but they never saw the ledger either. So here comes the question. Who is keeping track of the money we use every day? Who says you have money, and then you have money? Who says you don't, and then you don't? Today, we're going to explain what Bitcoin really is in a way even a 5-year-old can understand. You don't need to know code, and you don't need to know finance. Just imagine a story about kindergarten kids sharing candy, and you'll understand Bitcoin's core secret. It is not a visible coin. Let's start with keeping accounts. What does it mean to keep accounts? In simple terms, it means writing down who has how much and who gave how much to whom. For example, in a kindergarten class, the teacher hands out candy. Xiaoming has 10 pieces of candy, and Xiaohong has 5. Xiaoming gives Xiaohong 2 pieces, so the teacher writes in the notebook, subtract 2 from Xiaoming, add 2 to Xiaohong. After that, Xiaoming has 8 pieces left, and Xiaohong has 7. You see, the candy itself may be eaten quickly, but the record of who owns how much candy remains in the notebook. That notebook is the ledger. Your piggy bank at home can also be tracked with a ledger. Your mom says you earned $5 today for doing chores, and yesterday you spent $3 on a toy. How much do you have left? You don't necessarily need to spread every bill out on the table and count it. As long as the ledger is clear and everyone trusts it, that ledger represents your money. The banks we use in everyday life work in much the same way. Do you think there is really a pile of cash lying in your bank card, all belonging to you? Most of the time, no. The balance in your bank card is essentially a number in a line of the bank's computerized ledger. When you transfer $100 to a friend, there isn't a little truck carrying $100 in paper bills from your bank to his bank. Instead, the bank changes 2 lines in the ledger. Your account goes down by 100, and his account goes up by 100. Alipay and WeChat Pay work similarly. When you scan a code to buy a cup of milk tea, money doesn't flow like water from your phone into the shop owner's phone. Behind the scenes, several systems are keeping accounts. You are down 20, the owner is up 20. So you'll notice that in the modern world, whoever controls the ledger controls the movement of money. So why do people say bank accounting can be unreliable? This doesn't mean any particular bank is necessarily bad. It means this model has a natural problem. The ledger is too centralized. It's like the amount of candy each child in the class has, being written only in the teacher's notebook. When the teacher is responsible, everyone feels reassured. But what if the teacher loses the notebook? What if the teacher writes something down wrong? What if the teacher plays favorites and secretly changes Xiaoming's candy to Xiaohong's? What if a bad person steals the teacher's notebook and changes it? To take it even further, what if the principal says, starting today, all of Xiaoming's candy is frozen. He is not allowed to eat it or give it away. Then even if Xiaoming really has candy, he may not be able to use it. You'll see that as long as the ledger is controlled by one central authority, we have to trust that authority to be honest forever, secure forever, error-free forever, and never abuse its power. Of course, real-world banks have laws. They can't just change things however they want. But the issue is that a centralized ledger always requires you to trust some institution. When you put your money in a bank, you are actually trusting that the bank system won't make mistakes, trusting that the bank won't collapse, trusting that your account won't be frozen for no reason. trusting that the currency won't be printed endlessly, and trusting that intermediaries won't block you at a critical moment. Most of the time, this system is convenient and efficient, and we use it every day. But it is not perfect. Throughout history, some people in certain countries have woken up to find banks closed and ATMs empty. In some places, inflation has been severe. The deposit numbers are still there, but their purchasing power melts away like ice cream. Some cross-border transfers are slow, expensive, and have to pass through many intermediaries. So some people began to ask, is there a kind of money that doesn't need a single bank to keep the records? Is there a ledger that isn't held by any central authority, but is instead stored, checked, and recognized by many people around the world together? That is the problem. Now we come to the most important part, the principle behind Bitcoin's digital ledger. Let's keep using the kindergarten candy analogy. Suppose there are 30 children in a class, and everyone decides to play a new game. From now on, candy transfers in the class will no longer be recorded only by the teacher. Instead, every child gets an identical notebook. When Xiaoming gives Xiaohong 2 pieces of candy, he has to stand up and say loudly, "I'm giving Xiaohong 2 pieces of candy." After the whole class hears it, everyone writes it down in their own notebook. Subtract 2 from Xiaoming. Add 2 to Xiaohong. In this way, there is no longer just one ledger. There are 30, as long as most people's notebooks contain the same records. For example, suppose Xiaoming suddenly wants to cheat, so he secretly changes his own notebook from 8 pieces remaining to 80 pieces remaining. Does that work? No, because the other 29 children's notebooks all say he only has 8 pieces. Xiaoming holds up his fake notebook and says, "I have 80 pieces." Everyone compares records and immediately knows he is talking nonsense. Or suppose Xiaohong wants to pretend that Xiaoming gave her another 10 pieces of candy, but the whole class never heard about it, and no one wrote it in their notebooks, so that transfer doesn't count. You see, this is the simplest logic of a decentralized ledger. No single person has the final say. Many people jointly keep the same ledger. It doesn't rely on trusting one authority, but on everyone checking against one another. Class-wide shared ledger on the internet. The children here are not kids sitting in a classroom, but computers around the world running the Bitcoin software. They are called nodes. Each node can store a copy of the Bitcoin ledger. What the ledger records is not who has how many pieces of candy, but which Bitcoin address owns how much Bitcoin, and which Bitcoin was transferred from which address to which address. You are not stuffing a golden coin through a network cable to the other person. You are broadcasting a message to the entire network. A certain address wants to transfer a certain amount of Bitcoin to another address. Do you have enough balance? Is your signature correct? Have you already spent this money somewhere else? Only after these checks pass will the transaction be written into the ledger. Here is a key point even a 5-year-old can understand. Bitcoin is not a file. It is not one bitcoin.jpg sitting on your computer desktop. If digital money were just a file, copy and paste would destroy everything. If you had one digital apple, you could copy it into 2, then copy it into 100, and no one would believe it had value. The biggest problem in the digital world is that things are too easy to copy. What makes Bitcoin powerful is that it uses a public ledger to solve the problem of the same money cannot be spent twice. It's like Xiaoming having only 8 pieces of candy. He cannot tell Xiaohong, "I'll give you 8 pieces," and also tell Xiaogang, "I'll give you 8 pieces too." At the same time, with ordinary digital files, he could make 2 copies. But in Bitcoin's ledger, the whole network checks. Who did Xiaoming's 8 pieces go to first? Once one transaction is confirmed and written into the ledger, the conflicting transaction will be rejected. This is called preventing double spending. So how are these transactions written into the ledger? Bitcoin does not just write them one by one at random. Instead, it packages the transactions that happen during a period of time into one page of the ledger. This page is called a block. Once a page is full, it is attached after the previous page. One page follows another, linked together into a long chain. This is the blockchain. You can imagine it as a workbook where pages cannot be torn out or inserted. At the end of each page, there is a special seal, and that seal is related to the contents of the previous page. If someone tries to secretly change even one word on an earlier page, all the seals after it will no longer match. As soon as the whole class checks, they will know the notebook has been tampered with. To make the process of who gets to write the next page of the ledger fair, Bitcoin also designed a competition. Computers around the world, known as miners, compete to solve a very difficult math problem. Whoever solves it first earns the right to write the next page of the ledger and receives newly created Bitcoin rewards and transaction fees. This process is called mining. Note that mining does not mean computers digging gold underground. It means using electricity and computing power to participate in the competition to keep accounts. Why make it so complicated? Because if writing the ledger were too easy, bad actors could easily rush in and write fake records. Bitcoin makes writing the ledger require real cost. It's like if you want to stamp something, you have to truly put in the effort. For a bad actor to alter the ledger, they would not only have to change one page, but also catch up with and surpass the computing power of all the honest miners in the world. The cost is so high that it is almost unrealistic. This leads to Bitcoin's most important source of security. It depends on rules, mathematics, and participants across the entire network. Bitcoin's rules are public, and anyone can inspect them. The ledger is public, and anyone can verify it. The rate of issuance is also written into the rules. It is not decided by some boss in a meeting saying, Bitcoin has a maximum supply of 21 million coins, which is why many people call it digital gold. Why is gold valuable? Because it is scarce and cannot simply be created out of thin air. If you want gold, you have to mine it, and that requires cost. Bitcoin is similar. It creates a kind of scarcity in the digital world, not because its code cannot be copied, but because the whole network only recognizes the ledger that follows the rules. You can copy a fake Bitcoin program, but the world will not automatically recognize your fake ledger, just as you can write, I have 1 ton of gold on a piece of paper, but no one will treat it as true. Of course, Bitcoin is very different from the banking system. A bank is like a big housekeeper. If you forget your password, you can contact customer service. If you transfer money to the wrong place, you may still have a chance to appeal. Your money is held for you by an institution, which is convenient but requires trust. Bitcoin is more like holding the key. If the key is there, you have control. If you lose the key, no one can help you recover it. It gives individuals greater autonomy, but also requires them to bear greater responsibility. So, understanding Bitcoin does not mean you should immediately buy Bitcoin, and it definitely does not mean its price can only go up and never down. Prices fluctuate, markets go crazy, and people make mistakes. But no matter how the price changes, the most astonishing thing about Bitcoin as an invention is this. Let's summarize it in the simplest sentence. What exactly is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a public accounting system running on the internet. It records who owns how much Bitcoin and who transferred Bitcoin to whom. It has no central bank, no head company, and no single person who can arbitrarily shut it down or alter it. Computers around the world store the ledger together, check transactions together, and operate according to public rules. When you own Bitcoin, you do not essentially own a visible coin. You own control over a certain address recorded on the ledger. Whoever holds the private key can spend the Bitcoin at that address. So why is Bitcoin called the gold? Because in the real world, gold solves the problems of scarcity and long-term store of value. In the internet world, Bitcoin attempts to solve the problems of digital scarcity and trustless value transfer. Gold lies underground. Bitcoin is written in a ledger jointly maintained around the world. Gold relies on physical laws to make it difficult to obtain. Bitcoin relies on mathematical rules and network-wide consensus to make it difficult to counterfeit. Gold is troublesome to transport across borders. Gold requires vaults for safekeeping. Bitcoin requires private keys for safekeeping. It is not perfect, and it is not magic, but it has truly opened a door. Money does not necessarily have to be recorded only by central institutions. If you remember only one thing today, in the past, only the teacher had the ledger, so everyone had to trust the teacher. Bitcoin gives every child the same ledger, and anyone who wants to cheat has to fool the whole class. Banks use centralized accounting. Banks rely on institutional credit. Bitcoin relies on public rules. The money in a bank account is a number on the bank's ledger. The coins in a Bitcoin wallet are digital assets on a global ledger controlled by your private key. Once you understand this, you already understand more than most people who only shout about prices going up or down. In the future, understanding Bitcoin may be like understanding the internet 20 years ago. In the early days, many people thought the internet was just for sending emails and browsing web pages. Later, it changed shopping, socializing, media, and work. Today, many people think Bitcoin is just speculation, price swings, and risk. But the decentralized ledger idea behind it may be changing how we understand money, trust, and ownership. You don't necessarily have to get involved right away, because truly important opportunities often do not begin with price. They begin with understanding. If this episode helped you truly understand Bitcoin for the first time, don't swipe away just yet. Follow me. Next, I'll continue using the simplest plain language to explain blockchain, wallets, private keys, mining, Ethereum, stablecoins, and how ordinary people can avoid the most common traps in the crypto world. This era will reward those who understand it early, and you are now standing at the doorway.